Today is May 23rd, 2022. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Marjorie Smith in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Ma'am, where were you born?
I was born in Glendale, California.
Glendale, California.
Mm-hmm.
When's your birthday?
October 30th, 1945.
Who is your father?
My daddy was Willard Clark Lyons Sr. The best daddy in the whole world.
And your mother?
My mother's first name was actually Wilhelmina, but she went by her middle name because she had a problem spelling her first name. So her middle name was Anne. Her maiden name was Gronke.
How do you spell it?
Groncke. It was a German name.
Mm-hmm.
And they were married in August the 7th, 1944.
And your father was in World War II?
Yes, he was on the USS Hornet when it was attacked by the Japanese.
Yes.
And he had Alzheimer's, but there are a few things he never forgot.
Yes.
And that's one of them.
Did you go through school in Glendale?
We left Glendale when I was like 6 months old, and we went to Washington State because Dad was in the Navy. So we never stayed any place very long at all. And so, no, I went to school in Sunnyvale. I went to school in South San Francisco, Alameda. We lived in a lot of places in California, so, but no, I don't. We left California in 1959, and that's when we moved to Oklahoma.
Why'd you move to Oklahoma?
Because my dad was on board ship a lot, and Mom was everybody's mother because we lived in Navy housing, and all the women were married to guys that were on the ship with my dad. So Mom was everybody's mother. And there was a problem with a peeping Tom, and the police didn't tell my mother that they had the place staked out. And so my mother organized her little group of ladies, and they set him up, and they caught him, and then all of a sudden all the police in the world showed up because they didn't tell Mother they had the place staked out, and she had to go to court, and my dad was on board ship, and back then you couldn't call. So when somebody ratted my mother out, and when he found out, he got the letter that said Mother had to go to court and testify, he said, that's it. He was 1 year from retirement, so we had met some friends, the Vallandighams, when we lived in Corpus Christie, and they had moved to Bartlesville. He worked for Phillips, and so they maintained that friendship all those years. So Daddy called and said, find my family a house. And he did, right down the street from his house, and we moved to Oklahoma. Daddy got us moved in, and then he went back and spent another year on board ship. Okay. And then he retired in 60.
Did you graduate high school in Bartlesville?
No, actually, I did a home study thing to get my graduation. But it was just, when you move around, and you're always the new kid on the block, and believe it or not, I used to be real shy and inhibited. I've overcorrected, mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just a better way for me to do it. So.
Okay. And so you got your high school diploma of what year?
Actually, I waited until my son was 3.
Okay.
So that was 1974.
Mm-hmm. So you came to Bartlesville.
And then Daddy came a year later, and we moved to another house, a bigger house. And when I I went to work when I was 17 as a car hop at the A&W. And I was so used to moving when I got to be 18 and I had my own car and I had saved up some money, I started traveling. I went to Arizona. Somewhere along the line in Arizona, I met my husband, and the rest is history. So,
When'd you get married?
actually, Las Vegas, Nevada. It was so cool. It was called the Chapel of the Roses. And the wedding was small. We had family there. But then what was fun was afterwards, because we got to go to the casinos, and that's something I inherited from my mother. She had the bug. If there was a slot machine, my mother was attached to it. So, I mean, she never bet the rent. It was just back in the day, you could have like nickel and dime slot machines. That was Mom. She loved it. Yeah. And then she and Daddy both had a killer sense of humor. It was dangerous if you came to stay at our house, because Mother would short sheet the beds, or she'd put uncooked noodles in the pillowcase, or she'd put a pillow over a door. She'd almost shut the door, but not quite, and there'd be a pillow balanced over it, and then when you open the door, the pillow would fall on your head. Or when you were in the restroom, she would prop a broom upside down against the bathroom door, and when you open the bathroom door, you get hit in the face. So that was my mom. It's a wonder I turned out halfway normal. So that was our life. And that's just the beginning of it. We chased the preacher around in Corpus Christie, Texas, because he stole our car. And we found, we had another pastor visiting us. And then we caught him, and then we chased, and I was just a kid. I couldn't even drive. And we chased each other around Corpus Christie one night after dark.
The pastor stole your car?
Yeah, it was in the, we had a carport, and we had a two-tone green Plymouth station wagon. And I heard this noise, and I looked out the front door, and there was somebody pushing this two-tone green station wagon down the street. And another car had stopped to offer assistance. And I looked out, and Mom said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, somebody's pushing a car that looks just like ours." And so Mom comes to the front door, and she's looking, and I went to the back door that opened up onto the carport. And I said, "Mom, it is ours. Our car's gone." And so she ran out, and Daddy ran out, and poor little brother Smith, he was like 90-something. He said, "Well, if I'd have parked behind your car, they couldn't have stolen it." Newsflash, he had parked behind our car, and they had moved it to the front of the house, and he just didn't realize it.
Why did he steal your car?
Because it was a joke thing. I mean, holy cow. Ruby and JB Beatty, they went out of town. We never locked the doors back in those days. We went over to their house. My mother got into the dirty clothes, stuffed a pair of jeans and a shirt, put it in their bed, put a pillow over a football, and had one shoe hanging out, ate a piece of chicken out of the fridge, stacked up some chairs, put the chicken on top of the chair, and JB Beatty, he was huge. He was like a giant. And when they came in, he sees this guy in their bed. And it was the dummy that my mother had made. He got his shotgun. And he was standing there. His wife was telling my mother. He was standing there going, "Get up." I said, get out of that bed." And he was just about to shoot when that shoe fell off. And when it fell off, he saw clothes hanging out the bottom of the jeans. It's like I said, it's a wonder I'm happy, and you wonder why I'm like I am. It was a fun time, and now my kids are like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding." No, because they've experienced their grandmother.
Yeah. So when did you move back to Bartlesville?
I moved back to Bartlesville in 69, I think it was, and then my son was born in 71. He was born in Bartlesville. And I was married and my husband did construction, so we traveled a lot. And we've just been like Johnny Cash in that song, I've been everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. So, because we've lived in Arizona and Oklahoma and Missouri and Nebraska, just traveling, just wherever the job went.
Yes.
Because I didn't work and my son was too young to go to school. So we just traveled a lot.
So you a stay-at-home mom?
I was for a long, long time until I got a divorce when my youngest one was 11 months old.
Okay.
And then I went to work.
Where'd you go to work?
TG&Y, toys, guns, and yo-yos.
Here in Bartlesville?
Yeah. It's not there anymore.
What'd you do at TG&Y?
I was in charge of the men's department. So, and
Where is that located, TG&Y?
it's over there where, it's across the street from, what is it? You know that phone center that they used to have here? Call-in center. And there's a bookstore.
Oh, they're on
On Frank Phillips.
Yes, that Hastings or.
Yes,
Yes. Okay.
that's where it was.
Okay, the little strip.
In that strip mall.
Yes.
And then I left, and then somewhere along the line they closed it down. But that was the last time I got to be a stay-at-home mom. So, because I had 3 kids to take care of. So, but it's been an experience. I'm so proud of my kids. I've got one that works for Boeing and he's working on his master's. I've got one that lives in Germany and she's got her doctorate. And I've got another one that is an accountant, and I never can remember the name of that company, but anyway, and she works with, I think it's the Oto tribe. So, as far as their accounting and stuff.
Is that here in Oklahoma?
She lives in Choctaw,
Yes.
and then the tribe is situated outside of Enid, and I never can remember, it's a little town, but it's outside of Enid.
That's the Oto, Missouri.
I have no idea. All I know is what kind of tribe do you work with? Oto. Okay, that's good enough.
Okay. Now, Visiting Angels. What is Visiting Angels?
Visiting Angels is a company that provides in-home care, not medical. We didn't dispense medicines. We didn't do injections or anything like that. We just basically, you had some people that just needed somebody to stay with them. And then we would prepare meals, or if they were living like by themselves, did a little house cleaning, you know, a little few chores around the house and stuff. And it's just anything that they needed other than medicine. Like I said, we didn't have any registered nurses working for us.
When did you start working for Visiting Angels?
When?
When?
I do not even remember. I'm sorry. It's been, I know that it was after my mom passed away, and she passed away in 2005. And I moved up here in 2006. But I really, really don't remember. And then I left there and just started doing all that. I've done a lot of computer work.
Okay. What do you do for Visiting Angels?
I was the office manager.
What do you do as office manager?
All right, people come in and say, I want a job. So you talk to them, find out what their background is, you give them an application, and then you tell them that they're going to be drug tested right then and there. You'd be amazed how many people change their mind. Seriously. I had one gentleman who tried it twice because we had moved from one office to another office. Well, he came in, he didn't realize that we were the same company. And he came in and was talking to another lady and wanted an application. And I had already told him when he left And then he called back and he said, can I do my drug test on Monday? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, if you don't do it then, that's it. So when he came back that second time, I said, you still can't work here. So that's the last time I saw him. But yeah, I did some scheduling, took calls from the caregivers. You know, if they have a problem, you have to check it out and see what's going on. Sometimes it's a personality conflict. Sometimes they just stress. Some people are just not meant to be caregivers. It's a difficult job, especially when it's somebody that you know, that you care about or that you're related to. So
who were some of the people you took care of? Who were they?
Some of them were, you won't give any names.
Oh, no.
But one of them was some kind of a muckety-muck. He was a very important person at Phillips. And so I took a new caregiver over there to introduce him. And his wife had the most beautiful collection of crystal you've ever seen. All these crystal ornaments. I loved it. But anyway, so he was bedridden. And so I took the caregiver in there to meet him. And he had, laughter will get you through anything. And he had a great sense of humor. And he said, I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Are you going to be here at 5 o'clock? And she looked at me and she said, well, if you need me to be. So I told him, I get up at 4 o'clock every morning, which was true. Do you want me to call and wake you up? And he looked at me and he started laughing. He's like, I was kidding. I don't even know that there is a 5 o'clock in the morning. So, but yeah, we did some very, very prominent people in Bartlesville. And we also had some in Nowata, and there was a little town almost to Kansas that we had a patient in.
Copan?
No, it was past Copan. It was some little bitty off in the, like North Coffeyville or South Coffeyville or something like that.
South Coffeyville.
Is that in Oklahoma?
Yes.
Then that's probably where it was. And because it was like, we had one that they lived out by Sunset Lake. And we had rain, a lot of rain. And the lady, we were supposed to be there that morning, and my caregiver was already on the way, and the lady called and said, tell her she's going to go a different way, the road's flooded and she'll end up in the lake. And I was like, oh my goodness. So we finally got her there, but she was like, you know, can I just stay the night, because I don't want to have to do this again tomorrow. So, but it was very interesting. We had this one lady, her mother, bless her heart, the poor lady was taking care of her mama by herself. And when we stepped in, I don't know how she heard about us, but when we stepped in and started taking care of her mother, she came in one time to write her little checkout, and she started crying. And I was afraid her mom had passed away. And she said, no, you just don't. I'm going to start crying thinking about it. She said, you guys just don't know how much help you've been. And she said, I was trying to do this all by myself. I didn't know. And she just was that appreciative. And so I told her, anytime you just want to get away, just come on in and sit down and have a cup of coffee, you know. Because you don't just take care of the patient, you end up taking care of the family too. The family that's with them. You get to know them. And we had one lady, bless her little heart, and she loved to read. And she was from Florida, and she found out my dad was from Florida. So we would talk, and I would go visit her, and a lady at the library would bring her books once a week and then take the other ones back. And when she passed away, her daughter invited me to the funeral. I was like, she said, you're just a part of the family. And I was like, oh, you know, but anyway, that's it. It was just, some people are meant to be caregivers.
Yes.
Some people just cannot deal with it. It's not easy.
Now, how large of an area do you cover?
for visiting angels.
Yeah, Bartlesville.
If we don't cover it, we've got an office in Tulsa that will.
Okay.
So, yeah, because we, like I said, we went to Nowata, we went to Bartlesville, and whatever, South Coffeyville.
You go to Kansas?
No, no, because at the time, we had an office here and we had an office in Tulsa. Well, I don't know if it was Broken Arrow, somewhere around Tulsa. And since then, since I've left, I do think that he's taken on another office. I just don't know what district that is, but they're like a franchise. And so.
Is Visiting Angels national?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, and they've got a 1-800 number that, if you call Bartlesville and we don't service that number, we can give you a number that will service you. We'll find a place for you.
Now, did you actually go out and sit with people?
Yes, not on a regular basis, but like sometimes one of our caregivers would have a doctor's appointment or something, and they don't want to be gone the whole 8 hours, but they've got to have, you can't leave your client there. And so I would go over, and there was, this was great practice for taking care of my dad, because I usually got the ones that had Alzheimer's. I don't know why, but it was like, oh, call her, she'll do it. And this one lady, bless her little heart, she, with Alzheimer's, is lousy. It's a horrible condition. And she was looking for her brother. And I told her I haven't seen him. And we would just have these big conversations about her brother. And so finally she said, well, I wonder if he's down there by the gate. And I said, I bet he is. Does he know how to open the gate? And she's like, well, we need to send Paul or somebody down there and let him in. And I said, well, hang on a minute and I'll go tell him. And so I opened she always stayed in her room except for eating. So I'd open up the door and say, because it was just the two of us. She lived with her daughter and the daughter's husband. And so she'd be fine. But then when I left, she was crying. She didn't want me to leave. And I said, I will be back. Well, the next day we had a different caregiver went in. And she called me, the caregiver called me. I can't get her to eat. She's just sitting there. She's mad. She won't listen to me. I said, I am on my way. And when I showed up, she was sitting in the dining room with her breakfast sitting there. She's just mad. She just, no. So I said, what is going on? And she said, you came back. She remembered me from the day before. I said, I told you I'd come back. She's like, but you came back. After that, she was fine. She ate her breakfast. She let the caregiver put her back in her room. And because when you were there with her, you stayed in the bedroom. That she stayed in the bedroom all the time. Yeah. And she had some board games you could play, or you could read to her. But she stayed in her room.
Now, do you spend the night with people?
They do have 24-hour care.
They do.
Mm-hmm. It just depends on what you need. We had a couple that lived off of, I think it's Madison, where it goes out behind the mall. And he had mobility problems. He couldn't get around and stuff. And he had a tendency, he kept trying to help himself. And that's not always a good thing, because then when he falls and he's sitting on the floor, you have to figure out how to get him up. That's where a gait belt comes in. But a gait belt, it's...
Gait belt.
Yeah, it's a belt, kind of reminds you of the belt they used to wear with uniforms. And it's for the caregiver to help the people get up without killing the caregiver.
Yes.
And so... but she was so sweet. she was fine, but she was a senior and she just couldn't take care of her. She was tiny petite. He was not. And so she couldn't help him. So we had 24-hour. And I went over there one morning and she was like, you have to stay. What do you want for breakfast? And I'm like, you don't have to feed me. And she's like, oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. And I'm like, no, you go ahead. And, well, let me get you a cup of coffee. Okay, I had a cup of coffee with her. And her husband, we were feeding him, because sometimes you have to. And he wanted to go sit in the living room. So we got him in his recliner. And they lived like at the end of a neighborhood. And there was a forest out there. And there was a deer that walked across the street. And I was like, I am a city girl. I could not believe it. It was so cool. And I got all excited and I said, oh my gosh, there's a deer in your front yard. And he's like, you're a city girl, aren't you? Yes, sir. Sure am. Where'd you come from? California? Oh, yeah, you are a city girl. Yeah, okay. But yeah, we offered any and all. We had like 4-hour shifts and, you know, just depended on what they needed.
Okay.
And the services, because not all caregivers want to stay overnight. Some of them only want to work 4 hours, some only want to work 8 or whatever. And it's just dependent upon the client's needs and who they're staying with, you know, because like that one little lady, her daughter got home a little after 5, and so there was no need for a caregiver. And so you just work around the client's needs.
Okay. How long do you work for Visited Angels?
2 years, a little over 2 years. And then Dad's condition got worse, and so he got to the point that he needed a little more attention. When I first moved up here, he had not been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But I think he was having symptoms because my mama told me, you better hope that your daddy goes first. Because if he goes first, I'll be okay. But if I go first, he'll drive you crazy. What? Well, sure enough, the first year after she passed, I would come up here every weekend, cook enough stuff for him for the week, and put it in the freezer.
Where did you live?
I lived in Oklahoma City.
Okay.
And I would come up here and do his laundry. The man never folded his clothes. He would take them out of the dryer and he had a king-size bed. He'd throw them on the king-size bed. I said, why don't you fold your clothes and put them in the drawer? Well, because it's just easier just to find. Okay, whatever. And then that lasted for a year, and finally it was like, no, you know, and I called him and I said, Daddy, can I come home? He's like, let me go make your bed. Oh, okay. So I moved up here and been up here ever since. So.
And then he started going down.
Yeah. And he, like I said, there were a few things. His life expectancy when he was diagnosed was 5 years. He lasted 12. And he wanted, when I first moved here, he could drive, and he had a car. And I came home from work, I was in the driveway, and I saw him driving from Walmart, and I thought he was going to have a wreck, and that was it. So I took his keys, and I said, let me drive, I'll be your chauffeur. And he thought that was cool. So, and eventually he said, call your brother, see if anybody at the church could use this car. And because he wasn't driving anymore, so we gave the car to my brother for him to do whatever with. And then it got to where he always wanted the same thing for breakfast every day: apples and cinnamon oatmeal. And then eventually through the years it got to where he had a stroke. And then he fell and broke his tailbone. Then he was diagnosed with chronic lymphocytic leukemia.
Diagnosed with what?
Chronic lymphocytic leukemia, CLL. It's common in old people. And the doctor said, this probably won't kill him. Something else will kill him before that does. But then when he had a stroke, he had to have physical therapy.
Yeah.
So we had this wonderful guy from Nepal who came to the house twice a week and would do physical therapy with him. And then he would give me the exercises and we would do them in between his visits. And then it got to the point that he couldn't do anything anymore for Dad. And I still call him on his birthday, wish him a happy birthday. Anyway, and then all of a sudden, one day, he got to where he couldn't get out of bed. And I'd help him, he had a walker, and then he had a wheelchair, and we went to the 4th of July Honor a Veteran thing. He was honored at that. He's embarrassed, but I appreciated that. And so one day I was getting him dressed. He was always so polite. He said, if you don't mind my asking, who are you? And that breaks your heart the first time it happens. And I told him, I'm your little girl. He's like, you're my little pumpkin? That's what he used to always call me. I'm like, yeah. He's like, wow, you sure did grow up nice. And I'm like, well, thank you. And there were, I think, 3 times total, or is the only time he didn't know who I was. Yeah. But he missed my mom so much, and he used to talk about Mom, and then we eventually had to put him in hospice care.
What is Journey Home?
Journey Home is a hospice facility, and I have to be careful what I say. We probably need to hold off for a second.
Okay.
They were remodeling, and we ran into a major problem with that. And they told me if I didn't move Dad out of that one room, that I had to take him home, because he didn't die in 30 days. And that's what the guy said. And I'm like, so because change is not good for Alzheimer's patients. And they wanted to take him out of this room that was downstairs, and they wanted these 2 girls that were volunteers to pick him up and put him in another room. Anyway, and then he had a bad sore that came up on his leg. And nobody knew what it was. One lady said she thought it was a fish-eating whatever bacteria, that flesh-eating anyway. And so this individual that told me I had to take him home, he's like, if you don't let us move him, you have to take him home. Because he's not gotten any worse. Well, the next thing you know, there's a nurse that's on the board of directors. And the day I was going to call an ambulance to come and get him, and they said, she wants to meet with you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'd had a run-in with one of their caregivers because she was feeding him, and she wouldn't give him a chance to swallow or anything. She just kept going like this. And I told her, you've got to give him a chance to swallow. And she said, you don't like the way I'm doing it? Here, you do it. And she shoved that bowl of oatmeal in my hands. So she went to the director. And the director, somehow, I don't know how this nurse got involved. But anyway, the director was in that meeting, and I mentioned that. And she looked at the director, and then she looked at me, and I said, and I have a witness. And she said, you what? I said, when that happened, I had a lady that is a friend of mine who had come to visit my dad. And she was there, and she saw it. So you know the director's going to stick up for her caregiver, but the nurse said, if he wants cereal at 2 o'clock in the morning, you fix cereal at 2 o'clock in the morning. No, they didn't. Daddy wanted cereal at 2 o'clock in the morning, and she said, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll have to wait till the sun comes up. So I am not a fan of them. However, I needed help, and that's the most important thing. If you have somebody in your family that's got Alzheimer's, you've got to have a support system. It's just too difficult to do it on your own.
Is there a support system here for Alzheimer's?
I don't know. I signed up for a meeting it's a church over on Swan Drive, and I went, and I'm standing there and the door was locked, and finally a car came by and the lady said, can I help you? I said, yeah, I'm here for this Alzheimer's support group. She said, oh honey, that's been canceled. Did anybody call you? No. And that's the last I heard of them. So I did not have a support system. And so it's just me and Daddy, you know. And when he got to the point that he couldn't get out of bed before he went to hospice, I had a hospital table that I bought. And I'd take his dinner to him, and then I'd go get my dinner and sit in there, and we'd sit in his room and eat together, you know, so he wouldn't be by himself all the time. And then when he was in hospice, I don't know if you remember Bob and Laureen Houston, but Laureen Houston, and they went to Trinity, to our church, and Mom's known them forever, and their daughter. And one day, here they came to the hospice facility. Their daughter and her husband had come down from Kansas, and they came in to visit Daddy, and there was a lady that called accidentally. She dialed the wrong number one time when Daddy was at home. Daddy would talk to a brick wall. I'm just like him. And so I didn't know anything about it. I was at work. I get home, and the phone rings, and the phone used to confuse my dad because it sat right next to his chair, and he didn't know what to do with it when it rang. So anyway, I answered the phone. She told me who she was, and she said, I accidentally called your father's number today. I said, I'm sorry. And she said, no, we had the best conversation. We talked for over an hour. And I said, seriously? And she said, yes. I said, I don't doubt it. I do not doubt it. And she said, I just wanted you to know I'm not some kind of weirdo, and I would like your permission to call him again. That woman called him every day. I was like, oh my gosh. And she was just a wonderful, sweet. When he was in a nursing home after he had a stroke, she came to visit him. I didn't even know who she was. But anyway, there's a lot of good people out here. But everybody thinks if you don't ask for help, they all think you're doing all right. That's not true. So that's the first thing. You've got to have some kind of support system. I tried to find palliative care, which is where they come in and sit so you can go do something, you know. And the hospital used to offer it, but then when I called them, they said they don't do that anymore. So it's just a tough road. It takes a special person, you know.
Did your father pass away at Journey Home?
Do what?
Did your father pass away at Journey Home?
Yes. Yes.
Did you get Journey Home worked out okay? Did you get...
Well, the nurse, she was on the board of directors, and she had looked at Daddy that day, and she told me, she said, her first comment, the very first thing she said to me was, it's my understanding you want to take your daddy home. And I said, no, let's get this straight right off the bat. I'm being forced to take my father home. And she said, you've got to be kidding. And I said, they've said there's been no change to his condition, and he didn't die in 30 days, so I had to take him home. She said, I've never met your father until today, but that condition on his leg is definitely a change in his condition, and you do not have to take him home. so I didn't take him home. I didn't speak to that gentleman anymore that told me I had to. And they were all very sweet to him after that. So, yeah, but it was really, I still to this day feel bad about taking him there, because I would stay all night. They even asked me, do you want to stay the night? Let me get you a pillow and a blanket. And then somebody else turns around and said, she's staying here all night long. Well, that's the idea. It's the end of their life. So I think if I just had somebody that could give me a day off, I never would have put him in there. And that's my only experience. I mean, like this lady that I was telling you about, she lived in there's a home behind the hospital. And they have different sections, like this person doesn't need any help, and this section over here, they need a little bit of help, and this person over here. So they have 3 different sections. But she had her little apartment, you know, and I would go and visit with her and talk about books and talk about Florida and stuff. And she passed away there, you know, and there's good ones and there's not so good ones. But yeah, to this day I still get letters, invitations for, send us a donation. But yeah, because one night, I was staying the night with Dad, and I got up for something, and I was looking for the caregiver and couldn't find her. And I'm walking around and walking, because you know it's that great big house that I've always wanted.
That's the Kaiser house.
Yes. Oh, I love that house. Anyway, and I finally found her asleep in a chair all covered up in a blanket and stuff. And so, yeah. But anyway, moving on. That's enough about Journey Home.
Okay.
Next question.
When did you lose your father?
What did I do to him?
No, when did he pass away?
When did he pass?
Yeah.
July the 14th, 2018.
Okay.
So it's been almost 4 years.
So what are you doing now?
I'm old. The Department of Labor has a program called CSEP, SCSEP, and it's Senior Community, I have no idea. But it's a training program. It's a program for anybody, I think the age is 65, it might be 55, but it's to put you in a position where you can learn skills or enhance the skills you already have. And you can be on this program for 4 years. They find you a part-time job or they place you somewhere. It's not a job, it's a training. And they pay you $7.25 an hour. And you can work depending on their funding. It's either 20 hours a week or 30. Right now we're at 30 hours a week. And they train you so that you eventually can find a job that will support you, and then when your 4 years are up, they expect you to already have another job. And I am working at, or training at Westside Community Center, and right now we're on hiatus because the kids are out of school, and we're getting ready for summer, and I love being around the kids. It's just, because I'm just a little kid myself, and that's the fun part. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, and I do computer work and I answer the phone and this and that and the other, but the favorite part of it is the kids, because we have a lady, and her name's Miss Robin, and she comes in the afternoon and does arts and crafts with the kids, and I got to help with that one day, and we came in second place. When you take a paper cup, a piece of a straw, and a toothpick, and 4 gumdrops. And we made little race cars with them. It was just the coolest thing. I had so much fun. And I'm almost as tall as those kids, you know, because I'm not really very tall. And we came in second. It was just, I just had so, and they, I was meant to be a grandmother. My very favorite job would be rocking babies at the hospital. That would be cool. But I don't think they do that anymore. But that's what I do. So I work right now it's 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then I do genealogy till crazy hours in the morning, so.
Well, this is a very good interview.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Do you want to talk about genealogy? I've got over 14,000 people on my family tree. Can you imagine what Christmas that would be?
Yes.
14,000? Shoot. Community center wouldn't even hold them.
Yes. Well, again, this is May 23rd, 2022. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Marjorie Smith in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you.